Okay, greetings again, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining this webinar on empowering women in the energy sector in Africa. This webinar has been organized by the Energy Regulators Association of East Africa, otherwise known as EREA, which brings together the national regulatory institutions of the East Africa community countries intending to promote a robust energy union. My name is Leah Hadida Jara, moderator for this forum and representing the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Commission in EREA's Legal Portfolio Committee. It is an honor and a delight to be here with you all. We hope to look at some of the trends with regards to women and the energy sector within the African continent. Further, we want to look at the opportunities and the challenges and really the way forward. Please note that we are streaming live to many who are not in this platform, and further, the webinar shall be recorded for further viewing. To take you through the order of the session, we are going to have a keynote speech from Her Excellency, Dr. Amani Abu Zaid, the African Union Commissioner in charge of infrastructure, energy, ICT, and tourism. We shall then have some substantive presentations from our list of eminent panelists here with us today. We are honored to have the following individuals in our panel. The Chief Executive Officer, Electricity Regulatory Authority, ERA, of Uganda, Engineer Ziria Tibalwa Wako. The Manager, National and Regional Power Systems in the African Development Bank, Angela Nalika, and the Practice Manager, Africa Market at the World Bank, Dr. Sudeshna Ghosh. Finally, after our deliberation and discussion, we shall have a Q&A session. We therefore request all our distinguished participants to channel their questions and the individuals from whom they would want response from within the panelists at the chat platform within the Zoom link. So indeed, we are going to have an extremely rich perspective. Welcome. So to start us off, and first and foremost, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to present to you and welcome Her Excellency, Dr. Amani Abu Zaid, to give her keynote speech. To just give us a brief bio, Her Excellency is the Africa Union Commissioner in charge of infrastructure, energy, ICT, and tourism. An Egyptian national, she has a multidisciplinary education with an undergraduate degree in electrical engineering and a PhD in social and economic development. She has managed African Development Bank largest operational portfolio and implemented national and continental multi-sectoral development programs, including implementing the world's largest solar power plant. In 2018, she launched the Single African Air Transport Market, delivering on the first flagship project for African integration under African Union Agenda 2063. Her Excellency was selected in 2012, 2019, and more recently in 2020 as one of the 50 most influential women in Africa. Her Excellency sets the example for women in STEM and in leadership and decision-making positions, and is long named and recognized as champion of gender equality and women empowerment. Welcome again, Your Excellency, and over to you, Commissioner.
Thank you very much, my sister, for this wonderful presentation. And allow me to, at the outset, to thank the Energy Regulators Association of East Africa for having invited me to this important meeting. It's truly a pleasure, and it is important to see that women are coming together, especially in sectors such as our infrastructure in general, but here in energy. I would like also to recognize all the audience participating in this meeting, in this webinar, all protocol observed. And I am really impressed by the list of panelists and participants that are going to enrich, I'm sure, this event with their contributions. As you know, I mean, energy is critical for our lives. It's critical for the continent. It's critical, particularly for women. I strongly believe that African energy sector provides also ample opportunities for women to lead and to participate in many key areas, including access, finance, extraction, processing, generation, entrepreneurship, as well as policy development and decision making, amongst others. There is strong evidence that women are increasingly participating at the high level in energy development and business in African countries. Just to see, I mean, the number of participants in this event is the testimony itself. However, we need to recognize that much more could be done to enhance the participation and increase the role of women in the energy sector at all levels. In addition to ensuring the participation of women in energy business and leadership positions, we should also deliberate on how to use the energy sector to uplift the lives of women, especially in rural areas. It is a fact that empowering women along the energy value chain in Africa will significantly enhance income generation opportunities for women, reduce poverty, enhance food security, as well as promote the social and political status of women. Sisters, distinguished delegates and participants, ladies and gentlemen, there are many ways to empower women through sustainable and modern energy development. It is really, I would say, tragic that we are in the 21st century and there are more than 800 Africans who do not have access to clean cooking and depend on charcoal and firewood for cooking and heating needs. And the majority of whom are women, of course, as we know. It is a fact that choosing such unsustainable means to meet energy needs has impacts on health and mortality due to indoor air pollution, which mostly affects women and children. For example, there are 600,000 women and children who die each year in Africa due to inefficient utilization of cooking fuel. That, of course, to be added to almost more than 600 million Africans who do not have access to electricity. This cannot be, this should not leave us indifferent or even sit still. This is, as I said, has to change and has to change very fast. Women also lose a lot of valuable and productive time gathering biomass fuel and using inefficient stoves, which could otherwise be used for more productive and economically empowering activities, what is called, time poverty. It is also important to note that the majority of small and medium enterprises in Africa are owned by women. That means if they have access to modern and sustainable energy services, they would be able to apply modern and efficient equipment to run their businesses, thereby increasing their income. Therefore, it is important that women empowerment initiatives include the provision of modern energy services and technologies to women, in addition to ensuring effective participation and leadership of women in the energy sector. With regards to the inclusion of women in energy value chain, we must first address the barriers and identify the opportunities. One of the major barriers is the cultural bias and stereotypes, where expertise in science, technology, and engineering expertise are traditionally seen as exclusive to men. Thus, women tend to avoid building expertise in these male-dominated fields, which has led to the lack of clear career and growth opportunities for women in the energy field. Another major barrier is that programs aimed at building skills and capacity through vocational and technical trainings tend to exclude women entirely from such initiatives. This has practically disengaged women from building the relevant skills in the energy field. And in terms of energy entrepreneurship, women in Africa often have limited opportunities and means to run and expand their business compared to their male counterparts. Access to finance, and here I'm not talking about microfinance or small finance, but real finance for enterprises is for women in these sectors almost non-existent. And the energy field and the business environment in general is not gender sensitive, and this poses a major barrier to stimulate the growth of women entrepreneurship. Distinguished participants, what we require is a comprehensive set of gender strategies that can identify African women's needs and interests in the energy sector. These strategies also need to include roadmaps on how to exploit the opportunities and resolve the challenges for women in this sector. One strategy is to look into the education sector. Women need to be encouraged in large numbers to study and build expertise in science, technology, and engineering fields. Scholarships and bursaries could be used as incentives to attract young girls and women to study and specialize in the energy sector. There needs to be awareness creation and engagement activities that break the stereotypes that the energy sector is a male exclusive environment. Another strategy is to ensure that the energy business and work environment is attractive to women. This means that the workplace itself has to have a culture that is inclusive and that embraces diversity. Women also need to have role models so that they can be inspired. And I'm counting on all of you for that, especially from the successful success of other women in this sector. Energy companies and business in Africa should be encouraged to design suitable career paths and advancements for women as it is done in other parts of the world. Now, in the area of energy entrepreneurship, measures and policies should be put in place, as well as capacity building and technical training, as I did mention earlier, in addition to appropriate legislations and policies and incentives that are designed and enforced by policymakers to encourage the energy industry to employ more women and cater for the needs in the sector. As the African Union Commissioner, our primary mandate at the Union is to promote and ensure gender equality in Africa. As you all know, of course, this is one of the pillars of Agenda 2063. Of course, this ranges from developing and harmonizing gender-related policies, to advocating for gender mainstreaming strategies, supporting capacity building, and so on. We also initiated a number of programs and initiatives that address gender issues in various key areas, whether it's health, education, agriculture, political participation, but also infrastructure and energy. And I'm really proud that our team, we are working to mainstream gender into all our activities, and we rethought and redesigned the program for infrastructure development in Africa in its second phase to make sure that it is gender sensitive. And PIDA, which is the program for infrastructure development in Africa, is a flagship project of the African Union. So we have included we designed gender sensitive procurement actions, for instance, as one of the project selection criteria. This will prioritize projects which support participation of women in the supply chain of regional infrastructure sectors, including the energy sector. Another initiative we are very proud of is we have developed the African Network for Women in Infrastructure, which is a high-level advocacy platform to promote gender in infrastructure. To complement it, we designed a guideline on gender-responsive infrastructure development. Abbreviation is GRID, Gender-Responsive Infrastructure Development, to complement the PIDA programming and to help guide, the practical guidance to a wide range of stakeholders for the same purpose. In conclusion, even though we are starting the debate, not really to conclude, the African Union strongly supports the empowerment of women in the energy sector and calls on all stakeholders to actively participate in addressing the challenges of women in energy and all other sectors across the continent, which is crucial for the achievement of Africa's development agenda, the Africa we want. And I thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. You really have laid the stage for our discussion today. And indeed, you've put into mind that this is a time for call for change, a call for action for inclusion of women in the sector. And this has also laid an opportunity for our further discussion by the panelists. We thank you, we appreciate you, and we appreciate your input. And we do commit, I believe, as panelists, I believe all our panelists here today, as well as the participants in our spaces around Africa, to do and take up the call for action in practice on improving the sector and in meeting the needs of the various challenges that you brought out today and the strategies implementation. We thank you. So at this point, we would like to progress as the context has been laid and a particular strategy was talked about on mentorship and various programs that do take place to support women. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome to the floor our first panelist, Engineer Ziria Tibalwa Wako, the Chief Executive Officer of the Electricity Regulatory Authority, ERA. She holds an MSc and a BSc in Electrical Engineering, both from Makerere University, and a Master of Business Administration in Leadership from Walden University, USA, and was awarded the Excellent Performance Engineers Award by the National Engineers Registration Board at its 50th anniversary celebrations in 2019. She possesses 30 years of work experience in Uganda's electricity subsector. Engineer Ziria boasts of vast knowledge and insights of the subsector and its challenges, having had exposure to it throughout her working life. She provides and prides in the development of various national and development partner-funded projects, both at national and regional level. A notable leadership achievement by her or under her realm and leadership is that of ERA being rated the best energy regulator on the African continent by the African Development Bank Electricity Regulatory Index for the year 2018 and 2019. Additionally, she's an Executive Council member of Energy Regulators Association of East Africa. Engineer, we'd like to ask you, this was slightly talked about by Her Excellency. How can mentorship and innovation programs for women in the energy sector be embraced? Welcome, and over to you, Engineer Ziria.
Thank you, Leah. Thank you, our guest of honor. I'd like to thank the colleagues, the panelists, and welcome the participants. Leah, if you may allow me to share a few slides. Leah, I will use you to confirm that the slides are clear and are readable.
Yes. Yes, Engineer, we confirm we can view your slides and they are legible.
So thank you very much. And I would like to start off this by posing a question. Why mentor? And why think of innovative programs for women in the energy sector? Why is it necessary at all? I picked some demographics here. One by Irena of the percentage of women in the industry, in the renewables and in oil and gas, because the two then form the major energy subsectors. So you're looking at 32 in the renewables, 32%, meaning the other 68% is male dominated. And then for oil and gas, it is as low as 22%. Then we look at if we come home here, 40% of the jobs in the industry here are occupied by female, but most of these are administrative. We are privileged as I think Uganda energy sector is unique. We have a female energy minister. We have a female CEO for the regulator. We have a female CEO for UNOCO. UNOCO is the Uganda National Oil Company. But that set aside, if you look at the demographics in detail, population in the year 2019 stood at 44.27 million people. Out of that, 49.3 male and 50.7 female. Also, when you look at life expectancy, we women live longer. In Uganda, we are a little above the global statistics. Globally, life expectancy for women is at around 65 years, while male is at 62. In Uganda, it is 66.7 years, while male it is 62. So we are many, more than men. We live longer. And here we are in a key sector which contributes to solving problems to society, problems to humanity. We are the minority contributors. So then, why women? I picked this slide and I thought it represents very well the responsibilities and the expectations of a woman. So you're expected to support your husband. You do the household chore, be it washing, pounding, cleaning, farming. You caretake and babysit, you put the meal on the table. And as well as today, most of us here are corporate women. And that has not taken away our other responsibility, only that possibly they come a little easier because we have access to clean energy. So then what challenges, what hinders women from embracing STEM? What hinders us from attracting majority women within the energy sector? Been listed here several challenges categorized into childhood, youth, and adulthood. And the moderator will share in detail. But what I want to put forward is that the energy sector is initially, as we grow through the schools, is numerical. And as we enter tertiary institution and universities, it's a very practical industry. And unless the girl child is mentored right from nursery, maybe while they are breastfeeding, to enjoy numeracy, and then later on they are able to see and love and learn from the role models, to enjoy the practicals, and then grow through the ranks to administration to where we are. It may be very, very difficult for us to domineer this key sector, which not only affects our livelihood, but it affects the livelihoods of our children and equally our husbands. I just wanted to highlight here the key responsibilities of a woman, a mother, an auntie, that would have become easier if they had access to clean energy. Housekeeping, it is obvious that whether male or female-headed house, there's a lot of women input into the housekeeping. We've seen even singles, they have to come in with the female to help out on most of these. Raising children, when it comes to teaching them, revising with them, protecting them from the hazards of the gases directly and indirectly resulting from the pollutant forms of energy. Again, it is us. It hampers our productivity because many of the times we are the nurse. Whether it is the husband who is sick, whether it is the mother who is sick, at times even the father, it is the female figure who will take charge and responsibility. And then the impingement on our socio-economic transformation, because it all starts from small to medium industry, as small as food cottages, small as food industries, cottage industries. And these, if we don't have access to clean and affordable energy, it impinges on the women's emancipation agenda. I shared the statistics for Uganda here. 73% of productive women are engaged in agriculture. And this is not modernized agriculture. It is the agriculture of the whole and the, and then the majority of this is again subsistence, and then a few are market oriented. But this agriculture has no provisions for value addition because there is limited access to clean energy. Global Sustainable Development Goal number 7, to ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all. We are very far from this, especially also reflecting from our keynote speaker, what she has shared. So how can we then mentor and innovatively put in place programs for women so that we attract them to embrace the energy sector? One is that it's a practical sector, and therefore us who are practicing, we need to demonstrate that it can be done. It can be done at all levels, right from the choice of career, through the education system, all the way to the practice. So we need to put in place programs for skill development and training and skills. This is beyond university because it's a practical field. So most of the African university, the practical aspect is left to the industry. It is assumed that universities are linked to the industry, and therefore through industrial training, practical skills are acquired. But remember, there's a lot of unemployment, and even accessing the relevant industry to build the skill is a challenge. It's a challenge. And the other one is mentorship. And in mentorship, in addition to the engineering skills, in addition to the STEM skills, is guiding the women to plan their life properly. I've seen many colleagues who remember to do everything at the same time. You see a female graduate who enjoys a life for nearly 10 years and wakes up to want to do everything at the same time. And that impinges her ability to excel and shine so that she can be recognized to grow easily. The other one is showcasing of role models, and that is why us as panelists and our keynote speaker, we are here to show the participants that although currently it's a male-dominated sector, but it can be done. And I've already shared that the Ugandan example is even better, where we have women at the top of most of the ministries and agencies related to the energy sector. Providing networking opportunities, the keynote speaker shared, but I can also share with us women engineers, technicians, scientists, coming together to provide opportunities for mentorship, for guiding, for networking, so that we are able to lift up the identified talents at a younger age. The other one is improving the recruitment and retention policies, and this includes gender mainstreaming, There are facts that we cannot really deny, that a female graduate, as she progresses in life, she chooses to bear children. There will be time when she's on maternity leave. There will be time when she's heavy. She will have like 3 years of incubating a baby, of delivering the baby, of taking the baby through the first year. And some of these realities have to be taken into consideration so that there is gender mainstreaming, so that the policies in place can allow these younger girls to multitask a bit, allow them flexible working hours, provide breastfeeding facilities at the workplace, make it easier. She shouldn't be the one to climb a pole when she's pregnant, you know. Some of those obvious things, they discourage the would-be female participants in the energy sector from joining, because they imagine, and I can share in the recent past, I've counseled a girl who qualified to join a course in one of the Ugandan university to take a water and agriculture engineering, and she was being ill-advised that is a sector for men. It is so male, it's so practical. You will not be able to cope. You will cease to be attractive to men. You will appear like you are so masculine. And I had really to, you know, to sit her down and gradually take her through the processes and what she has to go through, and what is waiting for her if she makes the right decision and follows it up. And then the other area is recognizing women's accomplishment in the field. And that is the reason that I had to include in my profile that I was among the best excellent performing engineer in the country. Was recognized for that, so that the girls, the women can know that yes, they can equally make it. We were only 6 people recognized in the whole country, and 3 of us were women. So it is important that as we make accomplishments, they are recognized, so the younger women can see and pick the interest. And then the other one is ensuring access to finance and capital for entrepreneurs, but also building the entrepreneurship skills, because that is another area which is not well emphasized. Most of the women, once they qualify from universities, they flood the street struggling to look for employment. I've always shared that if you have the right project, package it properly, and make this information accessible to financiers, you will not lack financing. So Leah, with that, allow me to park it there. I should be able to come back during the Q&A. Thank you for the opportunity.
Very many thanks, Engineer Ziria. Those are very good words of encouragement and also enlightening to the panelists as well as the distinguished participants on the various roles of women and the various strategies mentorship can help you to plow ahead in this sector. I think what I picked out from this is the recognition of women accomplishments, and that's why it was very key for EREA to pick amazing panelists to be able to show to the ladies as well as men that it is possible, women of STEM, and STEM is possible. And with your various roles that you did mention, it is possible to balance and progress. So thank you, Engineer. We now move to the next panelist. Ladies and gentlemen, again, I thank you. And I wish you at this point, if you do have any questions that you want the panelists to answer, please bear with us and share them on the chat box. We would have a Q&A session later on where we'd be able to tackle them and respond them accordingly. So at this point, we'd like to welcome to the floor our second panelist, Angela Nalika, the Manager, National and Regional Power Systems in the African Development Bank. Her work involves building sustainable utilities, power sector reform, developing power markets, regional projects, project development and advising governments on PPPs. With 25 years under her tag and experience in structuring and arranging finance across diverse infrastructure projects in Africa, Angela has significant transaction experience in project development, origination, structuring, and portfolio management of power sector transactions in Africa. Prior, Angela worked as a utility planning engineer and was involved in power sector reform that led to unbundling into 3 business lines, that is transmission, distribution, and generation, in her native Uganda. Angela has an electrical engineering degree from Makerere University and an MBA from Cranfield School of Management. A very warm welcome to you, Angela, and over to you.
Okay, thank you, Leah. Your Excellency, Amani Abu Zaid, can you hear me? Leah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can hear you.
Okay. Your Excellency, Amani Abu Zaid, AU Commissioner for Energy Infrastructure and a former colleague, fellow panelists, Sudesh and Ziria, participants, and of course the organizers, thank you for inviting me to participate. I have a small presentation that I would like to share. Okay, let me go back. Okay. Okay. Can you see it?
Yes, Angela, we can see it.
Okay. Okay, thank you. No, thank you for inviting me to participate in this discussion. It's good that I've come after Ziria. I think Ziria has talked about many of the struggles that many of the women in this field have faced. They're not always the same. Some are easier than others. So my title is really Overcoming Gender Barriers to Women Entering the Energy Sector. But we at the African Development Bank don't look at this sector in isolation. So I will break down to you the story of how everything fits in and our view of how we get the women involved in the sector. So ADB has recognized the need for gender-focused initiatives very early on. This is reflected in the bank's vision for gender equality and women's empowerment. We recognize that sometimes women need a leg up. Women, girls, and young boys need a leg up to come up with programs that will really benefit them. There are women who have been able to get their seat on the table through whatever struggles they have. Some has been straightforward, some have not, but there are a vast majority of women and men in Africa that have not had the opportunity. So the vision for the continent is to transform Africa's key sectors into foundations of accessible opportunities, where women, girls, men and boys, regardless of their background, enjoy equal access, control of productive resources, and benefit from supportive infrastructure and services. It is quite a mouthful, but I think it reflects the challenges that the continent has. Whereas we have poverty in Africa, women disproportionately suffer from the effects of poverty for many various reasons: cultural, financial, and also income disparities. So we do have to look at it in all its entirety. So the bank recognized very early on over the last 20 years that they had to take an active involvement. So I would like to highlight to you ADB's gender empowerment journey. It's in the fabric on all our interventions. So from 1999, the bank did take active actions to sort of mainstream and bring to the fore issues around gender, issues around women. And this is culminated essentially to designing support that is geared towards women entrepreneurs. So at one point we even had a gender envoy. So in every year, in every action we take, we try to make sure that women, boys and girls are really given the opportunity or created for them. So to that effect, we even have had policy commitments to our shareholders. And these are very specific commitments over the next 3 years. Gender mainstreaming, attention to gender equality and mainstreaming in all our operations, creating gender profiles. And this is because we need to try and understand what we are measuring. We need to have some kind of baseline for many of the countries. So improving our understanding of gender inequality in countries with a focus on transition states. And transition states, these are states that are coming out of conflict. And those are a number of them on this continent. So these are real commitments that we've made to our shareholders that necessitate us to make sure we take an active design in our project. So we have as well gender mainstreaming across all banks' project cycles. And this is the new approach of the bank. Right from project preparation, the identification, it has to include gender screening in the project. And then the peer review has to have a gender lens as well, and as well assessment of the mainstreaming results in implementation and completion, and then evaluation will also be done on the same lens. So this is really to institute the practice of ensuring that when we do projects, we take an active interest in actually designing programs alongside that will benefit or will improve our gender participation. So the ADB strategy is really, is underpinned by what we call the 5 highs. The first 5 highs, light up and power Africa. There's Feed Africa, there's Industrialize Africa, Integrate Africa, and Improve the Lives of Africans. And you'll notice the first high 5 is the Light Up and Power Africa. And that's because without the power, without the electricity, I think we will not be able to achieve the rest of the 4 high 5s. So there's real focus on the power side. And one of the ways that we think we do it or we can do it is increase participation in the energy value chain and access to energy and energy projects to women. So the high 5s intends it should accelerate the continent's economic and social transformation, but also we have to ensure that women and girls are given their role, the important role in the socio-economic growth of their countries. So that's how the gender dimension is really reflected in all the operations and our worldview of things across the continent. So just to drill down a little bit, I won't really go down so much. If you look at the high 5s, keeping in mind that energy is at the right at the top, we're asking for equitable participation. The strategic pillars, empowering women, accelerating job creation for women, and increasing women's access, run across the high 5. And these are the expected outcomes. And of course, we hope that with that, we will have a reduction in gender inequality. And you will see that starting from 5 years ago, we started looking at how we categorize the operations that come into our pipeline. You can see that power is not doing so badly. With at least 23 of the projects have been well categorized. Some obviously, for some obvious reason, in the infrastructure sectors, especially power, it's hard to gender mainstream. I think it's challenging to be gender mainstream, apart from ensuring or encouraging that a certain number of percentage of women do actually participate in the implementation of the project. But sometimes after the project's been implemented, there is not much room for women. So that's where you have category 4. So you can see that we have, at least in the power sector, over the last 3 years, really done an enormous amount of work in trying to make sure that we design programs alongside our operations that will see women benefit or benefit women businesses. Yes, or benefit the girl child. And the Light Up, just a little bit about the Light Up and Power Africa program. The strategy for that is what we call the New Deal on Energy for Africa. It combines a certain number of elements.
Excuse me, Angela.
With this,
sorry, apologies.
Yes,
the slides are not moving up. Kindly, if you may scroll.
Okay, I've scrolled, but I think there is a lag. I'm actually on the slide on the Light Up and Power Africa. Can you see it?
Yes, I think there's some people have some power surges, so it's showing for some and not showing for some. So please, participants, please bear with us. We are, carrying out this session from different areas of Africa. So let's just bear and continue and listen on as we sort out on that tech.
Okay. I'll try and go a little bit slowly to allow for the lag. So the New Deal on Energy for Africa is a strategy that the ADB and the regional member countries, and in fact the AUC have supported. Its objective is to achieve inclusive growth, ensuring sustainability, and gradually transition into green growth. I think if we were to have to think aspirational as Africans, what would it take to achieve universal access? We think that it will take, at this point in time, and with our current pre-COVID, let's just say, our current levels of economic growth, this is pre-COVID, I must say. We will probably have to take another look post-COVID. 160 gigawatts of new capacity, 130 million new connections on grid, and 75 million off-grid connections. So that's the aspirational target that we have set out. And in this, the ADB will seek to play its convening role. It seeks to play its convening role. It will rely on strong relationship with African countries, successful partnerships with other development finance institutions, as well as public and private sector. And then, of course, partnerships, transformational partnerships, which will help us deliver. This could be by 2030 or 2063. I think whichever agenda that one aspires to, this is really now the basic baseline that we have all agreed that we should try and aim at. So in so doing, ADB's own contribution over the last 5 years has been at this, at least has been, we've helped finance or catalyze around 7 gigawatts of power, a certain number of much of it on grid. We still have a lot of work to do with the off-grid space. We have helped with the installation of renewables, additional households connected, but that by no means is what is a good result, but I think it falls far short of what we need to do. So in the next 5 years, we hope to try and speed up. Now that we have had a period of understanding where the real constraints are and where our money should be directed, we think that we can actually improve on this result. So over the last 10 years, this is what the bank has invested in the energy sector, and this is what it has helped achieve for the continent. So I just wanted to give you just a taste of what of the actions we've taken over the last 10 years in the power sector. And this will neatly take us to the next slide. For the benefit of those who cannot see the slide yet, the bank has over the last 10 years invested around $13.8 billion in energy projects, 11.1 billion of that in the public sector and 2.7 for the private sector. We have enabled 3.7 million connections on grid and about 560,000 off grid. We have also helped finance 22,000 kilometers of transmission lines, including regional interconnections, and over 100,000 kilometers of distribution lines. So this has been a real active, through a lot of active involvement of the governments, private sector, and development finance institutions. So on to the gist. In the Light Up and Power Africa, in particular, there's 4 cross-cutting levers to enhance inclusive growth. The first lever is financing and access to markets. Flexible PPP financing mechanisms with capacity building support and procurement linkages, as well as short-term relief fund. You may recall that I mentioned that we do have to design programs around our operations sometimes, given the nature of the sector, to make sure we have many more women benefit from that particular operation. So these are some of the levers or the interventions that we do bring to bear to many of our operations. The second one, under financing, customer financing mechanisms, pay-as-you-go models in off-grid energy projects. We have a number of off-grid or solar rooftop home system companies that are really fanning out across East Africa to help with the access. The second lever is the capacity building. The first level of capacity building is through our utilities. And on this one, I will have in the next presentation a little bit more information on the ANSI program, the African Network of Centers of Excellence in Electricity, as an example or as a case of how we are deliberately trying to build into our operations some gender-focused programs. So part of the capacity also has to be given to the private players for gender-responsive employee recruitment. We do have to have a system of incentivizing private sector to also take a gender lens to their operations. We have consultation frameworks for public and private in education institutions, energy companies, training in off-grid and clean cooking opportunities, gender and energy innovation and incubation competition programs. So we have operations, many of them financed through many of our facilities or funds or grant funds that are designed alongside our operations. There's evidence-backed policy environment. We try to influence policy, lobby with the governments to make sure that that they do take that into consideration. Gender and energy policy audits, right from planning to inception to implementation, are tailored in the operation itself. We try and make sure that we get the recipients of our loans or grants to provide gender disaggregated data. I think this really helps whichever party is a recipient of our funds to really think creatively on how they can bring in gender, involve more women and more girls in the operations. And then, of course, continuous capacity building of policymakers. We have, I think I will move on to the next, the ANSI. And this is the last slide. I wanted to spend some time on the African Network Centers of Excellence. This is a program that we're quite proud of. It's one that we're doing in partnership over the last 10 years, in partnership with the African Association of Power Utilities in Africa, APOA, and the Agence Française de Développement, the French Development Agency. It's providing expertise and capacity building. We are supporting around 5 centers of excellence around the continent. Some of them based in utilities or run by utilities. We have ESCOM is running one. We have some in Nigeria, in Cote d'Ivoire, and in other parts of the continent, where we have tailored programs for utility experts, but also some of them go down to technical schools where we pick, where they send participants to learn, for training on particular topics. Some of them are innovative, cutting edge. We've had topics like smart grids. We've had topics around, many utilities are struggling with integrating utilities. So we've had a lot of training around that. But most interesting is the last box, the capacity building for regulators. Part of that, and I think the one for women shouldn't have been in there, but I thought the box is for all capacity building. We have particular training in the past for HR directors in utility companies on gender issues. This was to try and encourage them to come up with creative ways of trying to recruit and retain women for key positions, for influential positions, but also twin with some universities in the STEM field on the training so that we can groom women and girls from very early on, focus on science subjects. Ziria, those are some of the programs that Ziria mentioned. So from our perspective, we thought we should do this through the utilities, through the regulators, and through the ministries of energies. So this is a program that we're very proud of. It's coming to an end next year, but we are coming up with another one that will last another, I think, 10 years, on which we hope that we will train enough and expand it beyond utilities to try and train enough more technicians, especially women, on different aspects in the science field, but in particular, in many of the topics things that are topical, especially in regards to the 4th and 5th industrial revolution. So I think that's the end of my presentation, and I will welcome questions later on.
Okay, thank you very much, Angela. And we're very pleased to understand, or we've given us an opportunity to understand the various initiatives that African Development Bank has embarked on dealing with the challenges faced by women and inclusion in the energy sector. So thank you for that. We're also very pleased. Questions are coming in. We are seeing them on our end. Some questions will be responded to right away at the chat, while others, or those that we do not respond within this period, will be able to take them during the Q&A. So please let them come in, and we're sorry about the little technical hitch that we had there. So thank you, Angela, thank you very much. At this point, we would like to go to the third panelist. And we are ready to go to the third panelist. So ladies and gentlemen, our distinguished participants, I'd like to welcome to the floor our third panelist, Dr. Sudeshna Ghosh Burji. She is a practice manager of East Africa in the Energy and Extractive Global Practice of the World Bank, where she is responsible for managing a wide range of operations and policy engagements. She provides oversight on complex operations such as hydropower, regional generation and transmission, guarantees, and sector reforms. An economist by training, her thematic focus is on project economics, monitoring and evaluation, and on a broad range of energy issues, including sector policies, energy access, renewable energy, subsidy delivery, and economic assessments. She holds a PhD in public policy from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill in the US, and an MA in economics from Delhi School of Economics, India. We now will get to see her presentation, and we'd like to welcome Dr. Sudeshna to the conversation. Dr. Sudeshna, please elaborate to us World Bank work on energy and gender. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Leah. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to be part of this panel, and I'll try to go fairly fast and quickly so that we have a little bit of time for Q&A. And thanks a lot to AREA for organizing this event, and good to talk to all of you. I wanted to spend a bit of time talking about World Bank's work on gender and energy. But before I do that, let's discuss why a focus on gender gaps matter. Next slide, please. First, it enhances development outcomes. Working in gender equality is smart economics. By reducing poverty, improving gender equality can result in better productivity, improving development outcomes for the next generations, and make institutions more representative. Investing in gender equality could trigger the potential for nations that are lagging in development actions. For example, before the COVID-19 emergency, the World Bank carried out a comprehensive gender assessment for Niger that indicates that by 2030, investing in gender equality could increase the GDP per capita by more than a fourth. This scenario could be possible by enabling women to have the same earnings as men and reducing the fertility rate. Second, it's a moral imperative. Achieving gender equality and realizing the human rights, dignity, and capabilities of diverse groups of women is a central requirement of a just and sustainable world. Investing in gender equality is not only social and moral imperative, but also an economic necessity. Countries are losing $172 trillion globally because of differences in lifetime earnings between men and women. Third is risk management. There is much more work to be done to ensure risk management efforts respond to women and girls' needs and vulnerabilities. This is really a topic that Engineer Zidia was talking about. In no small part due to gender inequalities, women are both more vulnerable to natural disasters and less likely to benefit from relief and recovery efforts than men. Evidence shows that when risk management efforts consider the differences in socio-cultural roles, norms, and values of men and women, the entire community preparedness is also strengthened and the number of deaths is reduced significantly. Next slide, please. So let's just focus on how the World Bank is working on gender issues. And here what we see is that, first of all, the sex disaggregated data is pertinent to identify gender gaps in access. There's a lack of sex disaggregated data and statistics that make gender gaps visible has resulted in an incomplete picture of men's and women's economic, social, and political situations in the world. At the World Bank, we are working on production of sex disaggregated data and gender-sensitive indicators that allow us to inform operational work that unchains in development results in more development, better development outcomes and better quality of life for everyone. For instance, over the last 6 years, we have been implementing the multi-tier framework of energy access. In the MTF, we have been conducting surveys at the beneficiary level and creating country profiles that show sex disaggregated and gender-related data. And it has been really impressive to see how many countries this has been rolled out. For example, in Rwanda, Ethiopia, Myanmar, Cambodia, Zambia, Nepal, and we are finishing in Kenya and Bangladesh and Honduras. So it's a global program, essentially. Next slide, please. So there's been a lack of systematized global data on energy of women in the energy sector. At the World Bank, we are systematically working on including gender focus in our operations. This is something Angela was also talking about in AFDB. To this end, we identify gaps, barriers, and constraints inhibiting women from participating in the sector thoroughly. However, one of the first challenges we face is finding reliable source of information that allow us to understand the issue's magnitude and tackle it. Systematically across the regions, we produce gender assessments that show women's participation in the sector as workers. We are assessing their skill levels, and also we are analyzing the type of jobs they perform. Thanks to the results of these initiatives and along with the governments and clients, we help create and adapt evidence-based programs and close gender gaps for each context. Finally, we rigorously track and monitor indicators that show our contributions in closing these identified gaps. Next slide, please. So let's talk about operational approaches on employment. So understanding women's life cycle is essential to increase the participation of women in the energy sector. Women face barriers throughout their entire life, resulting in gender gaps in education, skills, labor force participation, wages, wealth, and agency. In the energy sector, we have been working across thematic areas to identify gender gaps and barriers in different countries in Africa. After this exercise, we are designing, assessing, and implementing comprehensive approaches to address them. In education, we have been partnering with secondary and tertiary schools and donors to create mentorship programs and other strategies to increase women's participation in the STEM field. Also, we do not forget the school to work transactions and recruitment, and we have been working with the HR departments of utility companies to implement internships for women with the potential to transition to full-time jobs and other types of support and interventions. Finally, we recognize the importance of providing women the opportunity to have a career path that allows them to go professionally. We are working with our clients to offer safe spaces, offer childcare facilities and subsidies, developing mentoring and sponsorships for acquiring new skills, and open opportunities for women to belong to high-level decision-making positions. So let's talk about a few examples. Next slide, please. So first is Ethiopia. So we are very proud of this project. Ethiopia faces a wide gender gap. Global Gender Gap report of 2016 ranked Ethiopia as 109 out of 143 countries regarding the magnitude and scope of gender disparities. So the energy sector has the potential to contribute and to close these structural gender gaps. In coordination with the government, we aim to shift from ad hoc gender actions to a first of its kind sector-wide intervention model. We invested over $2 billion of World Bank's energy sector portfolio, and this has been a really important experience for all of us. This opportunity allowed us to invest time and effort to create a new dialogue spaces by engaging diverse stakeholders beyond the immediate stakeholders that we deal with. So what we see in this project is it leveraged technical knowledge and financial resources to enable about $6.5 million in client executed funds. It addressed the occupational sex segregation at utility with 22,000 employees. It provided childcare to about 11 regions in Ethiopia, and it supported career development and leadership training for women in STEM. And it also provided gender-based violence prevention and response mechanisms. In addition to that, it also promoted female entrepreneurship in the off-grid sector and collected a lot of sex disaggregated information. So let's move to the next slide, please. So this is an example in Comoros. The project is engaging women's group to build trust and accountability in the energy sector. So on the supply side, the utilities commercial performance is hindered by insufficient measures to properly deliver and collect bills, accounting and record keeping, and a quota system. On the demand side, a pervasive culture of non-payment of bills, illegal connections, and meter tampering prevail. So we decided to work on these issues. So the focus has been on supporting technical measures to address the commercial losses, installation of prepaid technology, electronic meters, etc. So we did a number of assessments like poverty and social impact assessments, a behavioral audit, a net mapping exercise, and a rapid results initiative, really to get to understanding how women can contribute further. And the results have really been impressive. 32% of the unpaid bills have been collected, number of outstanding bills have reduced, and a number of low volume disk meter consumers were also billed. So this is a really impressive achievement in Comoros. Next slide, please. So in the electricity sector, especially looking at a very important topic, which is gender-based violence, the electricity sector can tackle this very pervasive issues in some parts of Africa through broader interventions. New engagements on GBV include a new experience in Zanzibar in Tanzania, where we have developed with the clients to reduce the GBV by investing in solar power streetlights in some of the islands of Zanzibar. And this intervention will improve the pedestrians' walkability and safety, particularly women who suffer violence in public spaces more often than men. Next slide, please. So the World Bank is committed to gender equality through its operational work. At the World Bank, we are working hard to include and provide solutions to gender gaps we are identifying in the context of our operations. Along with our development goals, we understand that we are losing opportunity if we do not fix these gender gaps. As we have seen, we use data and information to identify the gaps between men and women, allowing us to talk to authorities and clients to address these specific needs. We propose specific actions that are tackling the disparities we find. These actions are adopted from evidence-based or promising practices that we know work in the global arena and serve as a platform to accelerate smart development results. Finally, we also propose monitoring and evaluation tools to monitor these experiences over time. Next slide, please. Finally, we share a lot of best practices. We published a flagship publication, Stepping Up Women's STEM Careers in Infrastructure, an overview of promising approaches in 2020. You are very welcome to look at it. It's on public display. In addition to that, we also have a number of ongoing activities that look at women's participation in STEM as well in a number of countries in sub-Saharan Africa. Next slide, please. And that's it from my side. I'm happy to take any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sudeshna. And we do see similarities in our presentations from the panelists today. All the way from policy level at the African Union, national level at ERA, African Development Bank to World Bank, especially the element of HR training. That's a new one. I believe we haven't heard of that, where you specially train them to ensure inclusion of women in the sector. So many thanks for that. And for all those who have questions, we are now at another stage of Q&A. So we have a couple of questions to our panelists. We'll commence them right now. The first question would be to Engineer or to Angela Nalika. The question is, how can women advocate for climate action through the use of clean and modern forms of energy? What are your thoughts on that?
Okay. Thanks, Leah. Well, I think different women can afford to advocate for clean, and this is my opinion, it's not the ATV's opinion, so let's just be clear. The reality of Africa is such that poverty disempowers. And if you have an inordinate number of people that live below the poverty line, your thoughts in advocating for food, let alone climate change. So the advocacy is probably left to some of us who have access to the tables where this advocacy takes place. However, I mean, what we can do as well for the people that don't have that access and they're just living day to day and live with the will live with the poverty. Is we can design programs that will help them move out. That's why the bank has a clear flagship program around clean cooking. The story is always told by our current president, who was really the vision behind the Light Up and Power Africa, and precisely the clean cooking. He used his own life as an example when he was designing, when he was advocating for the Light Up and Power Africa, the due deal on energy, and he asked us all to look at our own lives. So if you grew up running 5 kilometers from school, you had to sleep early because the village didn't have electricity. This really flagship really speaks to your heart. So we have a deliberate. In fact, it's a whole division with a manager to design clean cooking programs. So that's the bit that I think in designing them and in engaging villages, because this is a village to village effort, you do have to paint a picture for them, for their place in the world and their contribution to clean climate. So the advocacy goes with the education, at that level, but also with the opportunity. And clearly for us in the bank, I think the line that we've taken is that, for instance, we will not do projects now that are not encouraging the transition to green growth, for instance. I think we will not be doing any more coal, that's for sure. So whatever we do has to be geared towards that. So we're walking the talk in the designs. But for the many millions of women out there that have to scrounge around for firewood, and then sometimes don't even have food to cook with the firewood, I think the bank has had to design very special programs in mind for them, so that their voice is heard, that they're taking a step, they're taking up these programs, they're being enabled, and also helping them set up business SMEs that look at, for instance, clean cooking, clean stoves. So we have had to go right down to the basic client, the consumer, the individual in this kind of event. So really, that's really my opinion and my worldview of things.
Thank you, Angela. And what I take from this really is that, number one, there is an opportunity, of course, for people who have a seat of policy making and decision making, but it could be on any seat that you're on. So any individual or any women in whatever position that you do sit on, you could advocate for climate action through the use of clean and modern forms of energy, whether in your town, if you live in one, or back in the village. So it's a call for each woman really to be able to take a step of action. Thank you very much for that question. And thank you, Angela, for your response. The next question I'd like to give is to Dr. Sudeshna. The comment here is that at the moment, there are only 2 female PhD physics holders in Kenya, for example. 4 more are being trained locally at PhD level by funding by the African Development Bank. This is a call and a request for more scholarships for women, particularly in physics in Kenya and more so in Africa. What is your take and what are the activities and what's your position?
Thank you very much, Leah. And before I get into this specific question, I also wanted to add to what Angela had mentioned in the previous question, that in addition to the cooking space, which is where there is the role of women is actually quite defined. In addition to that, there is also the off-grid electrification space, which is much more relevant in the sense that there is also job opportunities for women. For example, in Bangladesh, in a number of spaces where these small mini grids, etc., were set up, women got a lot of jobs in terms of STEM fields. They were actually maintaining those facilities. And as a result of that, what happens is that it created a lot of economic empowerment of women in these villages. So they were not only using climate-friendly, local, renewable resources to create electricity, but also they were very involved in maintaining those systems and also creating job opportunities for themselves. So I just wanted to mention that as an example. So just to come back to the specific question on PhDs and what the World Bank and other agencies can do. As you heard from both Angela as well as from me, there is a lot of opportunities for women to actually be part of the STEM space. And World Bank is now sponsoring a few of the PhD higher education, not PhD per se, but masters and graduate level education in some institutions in both Africa as well as in other parts of the world, like Europe and US as well. But more importantly, what we are trying to do is to focus on utilities, in power utilities. If there are young women who are part of those power utilities, can we support their education going forward? Because what we want to do is to create the talent pool, create essentially a role for women along the entire chain of their careers. You heard from Engineer Zaid, Engineer Angela, they have all had 30, 40 years of experience. It starts somewhere. So you need to have more people who are actually in the funnel, who are actually entering the job force, so that you have more of Engineer Zaid and more of Engineer Angelas going forward. But if you have only 1 or 2 people, it doesn't help. So you need to have more and more women coming in, more women trained, mentored along the way, so that you have more women coming in decision-making positions. It's only when women are in the decision-making positions that you can actually affect change, right? So we really want to support that. We have a number of programs in the utilities in Africa. In fact, probably in every utility in East and Southern Africa, we do have programs in the utilities. In addition to that, the World Bank also supports some scholarship programs for women. And I can find out more what information is available. But typically, World Bank information is all publicly available, and you can go to our websites as well to see how they can be more structured and more helpful to women in Africa. So thank you.
Many thanks, Dr. Sudeshna, and to the participants. It is possible, and the reason of this very good mix of panelists is to be able to show you that, again, it is possible. I have a question for Engineer Ziria, and it's twofold. Number one is just to resonate with you, what sort of challenges did you encounter when entering the sector? And the second part of the question is, which programs do you have in your country that are used to mentor young girls and give them skills and training? Over to you.
Thank you, Leah, and thank you, dear participants, for the question and the engagement. Challenges to enter the sector. My response may not resonate with the current conditions because there were few engineers graduating, and therefore, once you have an honors degree, it was almost a given that you will join either utility or a government ministry. But that is not the situation currently, because currently what I advise the younger graduates and the young women there is, after graduate, they should be looking out for opportunities for skills development through graduate training program. And I think now I can also combine it with what programs are in my country or in my sector that can mentor the girl child. So we purposely provide in the price of the electricity capacity building program. And in that program, it is a requirement that 50 should be female and 50 should be male. Also that we take cognizance 70 should be engineering dominated, but also 30 we take cognizance that humanities support engineers to deliver excellently. So it is a program of 3 years where they are paid approximately a token of $200 per month. It's not a lot, but they are accessing practical skills and the competences. And also they are accessing the networks through which they can now, with the gain the practical experience for 3 years. Actually, the record we have is that all the female have eventually been absorbed within the utilities, within the electricity supply industry. Then the next one is we have a program tag named Women in Energy, where every month of March, actually this last March, we were caught short by the COVID period. We had gone through nearly 12 schools, girls, child schools. We reach out to, led by, we are lucky for the past 10 years or so, our minister has been, for energy, has been a woman. And even now with the new one is also a woman. And we really have several female leaders within the electricity supply industry, who, including the board, those who participate at board level. We are joined by the female staff in the respective experts, and we move expertise, and we move around the country, mentoring the girl child at that young level. Before we had time, I could screen one of those, videos where they give a testimony. Simple things as career guidance on which subjects to take in high school, on which subjects lead to this course, on how to manage peer pressure to come out of the teenage and the early university years, to plan life, you know. Some of those simple basics actually are what affect proper decision making and the successful these would be very, very successful STEM products. Were there challenges along the way of growth in my career? Yes, they were there. But what I can say is that if you have the ability to multitask, I've always shared the example of an electric switch. You know, an electric switch. When you want light, you switch on and you'll get the light if the electricity is on. When you don't want light, you switch off. So as they grow through from being younger graduates to now career women, to now mothers, to now wives, to now undertaking your master's and your PhD, nothing of your responsibility is going to wait. Because once you allow it to wait, then the opportunity will come when you are not ready. And by being ready, you don't have the right experience and you don't have the right qualifications. So incidentally, you have to learn to multitask. You have to learn to be the best mother, to be the best engineer, to be the best housewife, because you also want to enjoy a warm relationship in your marriage. But it is doable. It is doable. It is about having the ability to plan yourself well. I can share that I have 5 biological children, and I have not put my career to any standstill to be able to go through all those processes. So the challenge which may come in is the ability to multitask, and that is not only unique to women of STEM, but it is a challenge that majority of women struggle to cope with as they transit from being younger professionals to a level where we are now serving. Thank you, Leah.
Very many thanks, Engineer Ziria. And I think your response has actually answered the last question that we have, which is there's a lot of focus on engineers in the energy sector. Is there any consideration from other professions in the energy sector too? And this, of course, was answered. Engineer mentioned that there are humanities. So I'd like her to just do a quick answer on that, to just reiterate there is space for other individuals before we progress. And
thank you, Leah. Indeed, we recognize that for the engineering professionals to deliver, they require a lot of support from the other professionals. And we don't work in an island, and that's why I shared that in our capacity building program, we say 70%. The utilities should take on graduates that are of engineering orientation, but 30% should be the other orientation. Because we need the economists, we need the human resource experts, we need the financial experts, because we model tariffs. We model tariffs. Yes, the engineer will explain the transformer, will explain the relevant mix forecasting, will explain the relevant structure, but you will need the other, you will certainly need the other professionals. So we are very cognizant, and we try, because what we do in capacity building is to build the labor market so that when we need them, they are readily available, and then grow them through the ranks. Thank you, Leah.
Thank you. And to answer you again, Linda, I am one of those in the support and the humanities. I am a lawyer by profession. And engineers, despite being very technical, you end up being a lawyer with energy. Is it engineering expertise? You end up being an expert in some economics. So we do not live, you cannot succeed in seclusion. So it's a whole chain, and you end up being an expert. So there are roles on all careers as stated in the sector. So thank you very much for your questions. And thank you to the panelists for answering For any other questions that you may have, please still raise them. We will answer them, maybe not now, but at a later time. And in conclusion, I'd like to paraphrase words of Kwame Nkrumah. In our spaces, we must think as women and men of action and act like men and women of thought. On the foregoing, EREA is moving with speed towards an East African Energy Union and ultimately an African Energy Union through the steady harmonization of energy policy, sustainable capacity building, and information sharing within the region and the world. We would like to thank our eminent panelists, Her Excellency Dr. Amani Abu Zaid. She unfortunately could not stay to the end. We appreciate you for your remarks. Engineer Ziria Tibalwa Wako, we thank you. Angela Nalika, we thank you. And Dr. Sudeshna Ghosh Banerjee, we are very thankful. We thank the Executive Secretary EREA for organizing this webinar. We thank the members of EREA, and finally, we thank the distinguished participants for the invaluable contribution to the success of the webinar. Without further ado, I now declare the webinar concluded, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leah. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Leah.
Bye, Krishna. Bye.